Hello, welcome to another page from my Concertina sketchbook. It's been a while, I know, but I thought it was time to get back into it. This one is about a couple of the less prominent characters. So they're important characters to the plot, but not actually covered very much within the books or within the books. There's one book. In the book or the TV series. Speaking of the TV series, it makes me laugh that so many people want a sequel. Not sure how that would work. Do you generally get a sequel to the impending apocalypse? I don't know. Interesting thought. Yeah. I suppose it depends on who does it as to how well it would work. I'm kind of hoping I'm not getting too much reverb on this, so I apologise if I am. For some reason today is a reverberation day. Probably because I've got too many hard surfaces around me, but I don't know. I'm not a sound engineer. I wish I had a sound engineer. That would be cool. Someone to look after my delicate vocal instrument. Right. So this is basically going to be a drawing of a family portrait. Does that make sense? Yes. Drawing a family portrait in the American style, because these characters are American. They are the family that both heaven and hell think house the Antichrist, but actually the Antichrist, through a series of unfortunate events, or fortunate events depending on how you look at it, ended up somewhere completely different in rural England. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. At the moment, probably not a good thing, but not necessarily a bad thing either. What was I going to say? Yeah, so I am using the pens from the Artful Box, my last Artful Box unboxing. Partially because I wanted to see what they could do, because I didn't try out like blending them or anything else, because they're water based, so they're blendable and water blendable. It's a very stiff pose, but then it's supposed to be one of those formal portraits, so I do apologise for that. I also apologise for the fact that the child looks like Jonathan Meade. This guy did all those weird documentaries in sort of 90s and 2000s about, well, he did all sorts of things, didn't he? He did art stuff, but he also did sociology type stuff. Very weird guy. But then a lot of people are very weird, and that's a good thing. We here at Goblin HQ do appreciate a weird person. For are we not all, deep down in our hearts, weird people? I know I am. Right, so yeah, so you've got the image there. Standard nuclear family. When I was a kid, I always used to think when people said nuclear family, they meant like powered in some way by nuclear power, or something to do with living in the nuclear age or something like that. But actually, they just mean a small, like a nucleus, the small central part of the family, which of course we all know now is a bit of a pain in the bum. And it's actually, you know, a lot of other people and peoples and cultures have got a better idea of having a more extended family makeup, especially at the moment with all the quarantine and what have you, because it'd be quite nice to have an extended family around. I mean, to be fair, I don't actually necessarily get on with my extended family. However, that's not the point. The point is to have, you know, to not be lonely. It's a lot to expect, you know, two parents to be able to cover everything in a child's life. But I don't know. Maybe I'm mellowing in old age. I'm turning into... No. Actually, no. But I don't really like people in my... I mean, it wouldn't work for me anyway, because I don't really like people in my space, so I actually prefer being part of a small unit where I can hide in the corner. Well, not in the corner, but, you know. I can hide in a room, close the door, and there's not like 20 other people in the house. Some days I prefer it when there's no other people in the house, frankly. But that's cool. So yeah, so I'm sort of pushing these, but I'm also using watercolour pencils for detailing and for toning and shading and tinting and what have you. The bright colours of the... Because marker pens, unless you actually pay out for the subtler tones, generally they're quite vibrant, but you don't always want it to be bright blue or bright pink or bright purple or what have you. You want to tone it down a bit. So I quite like it, putting a bit of pencil over pen, because it just brings it down a little bit more, because pencil tends to, especially if you use a slightly flattened version of the colour you used on top. So, you know, for example, the blue suit, I'd use, rather than it being a bright blue that I'd use on top of it, I might do for highlights and stuff like that, but in general I use a darker blue because I quite like working from mid-tones outwards. So sort of a medium coloured thing, add in the dark and add in the lighter tones. For me, I quite like that. Obviously, starting on white paper can be a bit of a... It can be a bit of a challenge when you see a white page. So it's quite nice just to get something on there to start with, which is why you saw me right at the very beginning just using that pale grey, just so that the page wasn't blank. So I had like a guide of where I was going, mentally speaking. You know, it all helps. It all helps. Yeah, I mean, it's not the best illustration I've ever done, I have to say. But then I always think that illustrations work better when you have a brief. If I had like, when you have to make your own, brief, you tend to either be too vague, or you expect too much of yourself because you've already got the idea in your brain. Having a brief from someone else gets around that, because one, you are in a position where you're trying to fulfill what someone else has done, so you're more careful about how you plan it and how you go through it, because it's about matching your output with their expectations. So yeah, it can be a pain in the bum if you don't have a great working relationship, but I always think that can be overcome. But when it comes to, you know, things like, also there's less of an emotional, because it's a transaction, it's a relationship based on that transaction of, you know, not necessarily money, depending on what you're doing. I mean, if you're doing something as a favour to a friend or something, that's that sort of, it's not your personal baby. So even though the work is your baby, it's kind of, there's less of a, you're not putting yourself out to judge because it's someone else's idea. That's what I always think. It's kind of like, in a lot of ways, it's like acting. Oh, missed out a whole chunk there. I keep doing that. I keep going to do videos, and for some reason I either forget to turn the video cap on, or I do something that's just ruins a bit of video. Self-sabotage. What can I say? But I don't know. It's interesting. What was I saying? Yeah. So yeah, I feel it's less. So it's like acting, because when you're acting, you're even though it's you doing it, it's the character that the audience are watching. It's not you. So you put yourself into the character, and the character's like a sort of shell. And if it's successful, everyone believes the shell is you, which is cool. And if it's less successful, it's obvious you're acting, but that's okay too, because you're in a situation where that's appropriate. So, for example, if you go to pantomime, for example, you don't actually expect the pantomime dame to be dressed like that off stage. You don't expect them to have that personality or squeaky voice or to talk basically wall-to-wall innuendo, although I do. That's beside the point. So you don't expect that person is a real person. That character is a real person. So, and I think it's just layers of that. I always worry about people who are like, oh my god, they're just like their character, and it's like, well, that's not really acting, is it? That's just being yourself under another name. That's almost like some sort of bizarre identity theft thing. I don't know. I don't know why this has made me think of this. I think because the character here, the kid, is the person they think is the Antichrist in the story of the book, and in the thing, but he's not. So there's a sort of, it's not him pretending to be someone else, it's them almost pretending that he's someone else, or they're working under that misconception. So it's a weird sort of thing. So I don't know. But I mean, well, it's like all the arts, there's always crossover in the arts, isn't there? I mean, if you're acting, if you're drawing, if you're illustrating, if you're into fine art and that sort of thing, which I am, yes, I can explain to you about fine art things. You probably wouldn't like it though. I mean, you might. I don't know. Let me know if you ever want me to explain any sort of weird fine arty, conceptually contemporary arty things. I'm more than happy to do so. I may even try and confine it to words of fewer than 3 syllables. Maybe not. I don't know. It's all good fun. Yeah, so the arts crossover. You are putting forward an image of yourself, because you can't necessarily communicate what you're trying to get across as yourself, or as, I mean, for example, what's the old quote? I can't remember who it was. I can't remember. There was a dancer, and she said if she could say what she wanted to say, she wouldn't need to dance. And I think a lot of people in the arts are like that. So, for example, if an author could say what they wanted to say, they wouldn't need to write the story. If an artist could say what they wanted to say, they wouldn't make the art. Because art isn't photography anymore. And the same with, I mean, even illustration to an extent, because illustration is all about telling a story in an image or in a set of images. So there's obviously something in human nature that makes us want to do that. And how this relates to these things, I think it's my way of exploring the story. I can't necessarily be in the story, but I can do my interpretation of elements of the story. I mean, this is not particularly I think this one is a bit... I've gone for the stiff and formal look because actually this feels like quite a formal part of it. I mean, the story doesn't work without this misunderstanding and them thinking that this child is the child they think it is. But at the same time, it's almost like that's a device. So it's a formality. And these people are supposed to be quite a certain echelon society, and again that comes with its own formalities and sets of rules and stuff, and that's all, quite often that's all acting as well. That is all pretending to be something you're not, or thinking you are something particular, whether you are or you aren't. You know, you might 100% believe that you're the most important person in the world, but that doesn't make it so. I could believe I was Queen Elizabeth I, but that wouldn't make me so. Unless I was actually Queen Elizabeth the First. I mean, she was allowed to think that she was Queen Elizabeth I, obviously, though she wouldn't have necessarily thought she was the first. She would have just thought she was Queen Elizabeth. You know what I'm saying. This is all a bit waffly and meandery, but it's... yeah, I think it's good. But, you know, and I'm trying to do that whole fucking... excuse my language. I'm trying to do that whole flipping... symbolism deal there, so you know that you've got, here I am drawing two feathers, so you know that this child has been influenced by two sides on the well, actually the two, what I would consider the main protagonists in the story, the angel and the, is he a devil, is he a demon? I mean, the agents of heaven and hell have influenced this child. So yeah, so there's that, and I would imagine in the long run it kind of balances out. I mean, we all have our good bits and our bad bits, and you hope that you're not all bad, but then again, being all good, I mean, if you go by the church and the people who do believe in heaven and hell and what have you, being all good would be a bit dull as well. So it's an interesting little thing. It's none of us is all good, none of us is all bad. It's just some people's bad outweighs their good, and vice versa. They look so... these people look so unreal. They're not great. It's not my best drawing, I have to say. But you know, not bad from an impromptu, from scratch. No prelims. Here I am trying to make excuses for myself. Just using a teeny tiny fine liner. This fine liner is 0.03 millimeters wide. That's tiny. It really doesn't write drawing over the top of pencil either. But yeah, I just wanted to, I don't know, just wanted to make them look as if they actually had human features. I'm not sure I've succeeded, but hey, kind of glossy. I always think of Americans as more glossy as British people. I always think of Americans as being more glossy, especially in the public eye, than British people. I think British people definitely have that ability to be a bit, what's the word? I don't know a good word, but it's kind of like cardigan-y. They're very much sort of, you can imagine an English person turning up to an interview in like casual trousers and a cardigan and getting away with it. We can't quite imagine an American doing it. You know, they've either got to have, you know, if it were in a cardigan, it would be like a haute couture type thing. They're just, even though they're not as formal as the British, particularly the English, are made out to be, I feel that actually they take a lot more, I suppose, a lot more pride in that sort of the seaming of things. Very, very, very hot on good first impressions, which is not a bad thing, not at all. I, of course, am a slob, but that's cool. I am my own kind of slob. So I've made it look as if this guy is holding his jacket closed. Maybe he is. Anyway, we're starting to come up to the end of the video. So I'm going to respectfully ask you to like and subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. If you don't like this video, find one of our other ones like that. I don't mind. But don't forget to take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.